do it. So this is Josh and Luke, and we're playing with programming because it's the best.
Hi, friends.
Okay, so I was going to show you make sure I've got everything. I do. This thing, so this is the sort of time tracker, for people that don't know, it's the elm-mdl like single page app with a Phoenix API backend thing that I'm working on as like an example. You can do stuff like add users and edit users, and that all works. And it's cool. And so the thing I wanted to do was make it where you had server-side, well, two things. First is client-side form validation, because it kind of sucks to not have that. And then the other thing would be server-side validation, which is what I'm going to work on today. So client-side validation is really cool. There's this thing, elm-simple-form, and it's pretty great. And real quick, I'll just clone it so we can see their example, because that's easier. Actually, let me just do this. So I have a checkout. I have tag after episode 022.2. So if we go here, yeah, that's fine. Okay, so if we go here and I refresh, then we go to a new user. It's got this really ugly form because elm-simple-form, if I show you the API, let me make things bigger also over here. Oh no, not quite that. Yeah, that's fine. elm-simple-form has this API. So here's like the basic usage of it. So you have, the thing I really like is you have like this this type that is what your form produces. And then you have a form, which is just a form, I forget what this is for now, and like the type it produces. And that's
like it's like a custom error type if you want to include.
Yeah, that's right. I actually use it in the thing I just did. Thank you. And so your model has just a single field, because if you've done forms in Elm and you do it kind of the sort of naive way, which I do because it's kind of okay, you end up with a whole bunch of messages that are like, update this field, update that field, and like you have a bunch of fields that you're storing, and sure, so you make a nested record, but whatever. Ultimately, I end up storing things that are not super relevant to the thing I want to do. Like for a new user form thing, I like want to store a user, but that sort of user doesn't have an ID, and so I have like a maybe ID, but then anyways, a bunch of dumb stuff that ends up making code overly boilerplatey and not pleasant to write forms. And there's lots of ways to get around it, but I really like the way Simple-Form does this. So and I know that you know a lot of this stuff. I'm just kind of giving context for the viewers. Anyway, so you have like this form type, and it represents basically a dict of the form fields with names, and they can even be like name.foo.bar, so you can do like nested fields, nested forms, and it will produce this thing if the validations pass, which is fun. And then you have messages, so like your normal messages, and then you have the kind of T style, you tag a message, and that goes to that gets a form.message, and then you would apply this to that part of your record. And then you have like this validation thing where you have a validation function that validates for your particular type of thing, and it works just like JSON decoders. So you say, here's a form that has two fields, it produces a foo. I want to get the bar field, and it should be an email, and I want to get the baz field, and it should be a boolean. And if that happens, then like we apply foo on those two fields, and stuff is good. If it doesn't happen, then we get validation errors. And so you do your normal like form.update, typical T stuff here. And when you render your form, all you have to do is map to like form message, and then have some view that produces form messages. And so here he's like pulling the form out of the model, and produces an error presenter. So it says, look, if there was a live error on this field, then I want to produce like this HTML bit, right? That's what this error for produces, that has the error for the field on it with a class error, so I can make it pretty. And then go ahead and fetch the fields out of the form. So you want to be able to reference these things. And what you get back when you do this is I forget what it's called, but basically it's a structure that represents the field with both like the value and the path to get there, and conceivably errors. So anyway, so you see here baz, he gets whatever he gets back, he can call error for on, which means that thing is a record with a live error field. Anyway, so and then it has these helpers. This is the important part. All that other stuff, whatever. But the part that makes it hard to just like say, cool, I'm going to use this and elm-mdl together, is if you want to use the nice helpers. There's like inbox.input.checkbox produces a checkbox input that knows how to do all the stuff that it has to do to provide the live validation. I haven't even shown the live validation yet, so here we go. I want to make a user. I type some stuff. It's invalid for the user to not have a name, so I can do this all day long. This is what you want out of live validation. If I submit, it works. If I come back here and I say like no, and I submit, then this is the error message. It's ugly. It's not styled. I don't care. And then if I type, it goes away. But now that I've validated, when I empty it out, it comes. Well, I thought it came back. Oh, if I click away, when I blur it, it comes back. Anyway, whereas I think when I blur, yeah. Oh wow, that's bad. I don't have those subscriptions tied in. That's terrible. I could have sworn I did that way early on. Oh well. So my prime example of using elm-mdl for a single page app fails in a very obvious way. Anyway, we'll just fix that by doing that. So okay. So that's cool, but this is terrible and ugly. And if you look at like my other resources, I'm not going to say they're super attractive, but they use elm-mdl's form fields. And like, I want all this, but I want the validation bit too. So I want to get those. So the way to get those to work, yeah, the problem is these helpers do some stuff. And so like these produce an HTML element, but I don't want an HTML element. I want an elm-mdl component. So kind of had to dig in a bit to see how to do it, and then it became super obvious. So if you look at the implementation of the form inputs, they all defer to this base input, where it just specifies a type, and toField, which tells it what kind of field it is, which comes from, I'll open up a separate tab, comes from form field. So like I have these field types, so you can have like a group, you can have a text, you can have a text area, or select, or ready, or check, or like, I don't know what empty field is.
Hidden field? I don't know. Yeah.
Maybe.
No idea.
Validation, I don't think I've ever performed validation on a hidden field. I can imagine doing it if you have. Anyway, doesn't matter. So cool, we have like this base input thing, and then there's this weird thing, and it turns out that's just maybe with default flipped, so it's a nice infix operator. And you can think of this like or equals. And yeah, so all that it's doing is producing an input field with these attributes. And the attributes specifically, this is kind of squirrely, not really, but it says like apply the toField, which is this kind of tagger that you passed in. Compose that with this input state.path. And then like on focus, you just say hey focus it, and on blur you say hey blur it, and then if you're handling this, you have to make sure you map the messages to the proper type. So it's not like the end of the world, but yeah, it's kind of neat. The thing that's interesting is if you look at like base input text to text, it produces, so this is like the JSON decoder sort of thing.
Yeah.
So its type, this isn't a function, right? It takes no arguments. Its type is an input E string. And so input EA, so A is like kind of the value, and E would be errors. So it produces this thing. So it's a function that takes field state and a list of attributes. And these would be like things that you bolt on later, which is what this bit is. And actually, hold on, that's not what that is, because yeah, it is. Okay, sorry. And then this HTML message. So you end up with this thing. It's kind of interesting because it is a function type alias, and yeah, I don't know. So to implement this, I did a really dumb thing that taught me a lot about things that I didn't need to learn at that particular moment, but I didn't know until I got like 6 hours in, which is great. But okay, so if we go to the after episode 022.3, if we go here, then we can see that, and that should have refreshed, but maybe it just didn't get the, maybe switching branches doesn't notify it the same way. So now we have the same thing. We have our nice material design form, but we have validation.
Oh, that's beautiful. Look at
yeah,
that.
and it actually uses the material design errors, and so I wanted to show how that was done. I wanted to show you specifically because we talked about it. So, and what we really talked about was doing the server-side validation, which is what I'm doing today. But for now, this is good. This is neat enough. So, and you can kind of let me get rid of this stuff. So, there's a bit here that is somewhat silly. So I don't normally you would see an application do like html.app.map, whatever, like the sub message is. In this case, it'd be user message for a view, or like and then inside of here, I would map this whole thing across the form message tab thing. So the way that my messages look, and I'll refactor this still further, but basically my top level messages like can do things with users or projects, organizations. They can also navigate to a place, and they can do some MDL stuff.
Nice.
And so the user message has like this bit of stuff in it, which can be made better. But it used to have like set new username.
Oh
string.
yeah, okay.
And so a lot of times forms, like in the most naive style, look like that. But then like you have that many messages for however many fields you have, and you still don't have validation. So the nice thing about form, even though I only have one field, so it's not super clear, is like all of those things can go away, and you can just defer to the way that form does stuff with its dictionaries, so that you can have all your fields managed, and you don't really care. Because also another thing that I had was like on my model, I had this. Right now I have like this new user form.
Mm-hmm.
What I had was new user,
Right.
which is like a maybe user or something, or maybe it was just a user. I don't remember, but like that was just a place to put that data. Now I put that data here, but I don't
Right.
produce a user unless the form is valid.
So now that user is just kind of computed from
Yes,
the more fundamental data that you have there.
yeah, and only if like the form is valid, and this is just parameterization to say like this is what the form produces. So what did
There's
I
like
change?
there's like a whole classification of UI bugs that comes from just like having extra state hanging
Yep.
around because you haven't computed it yet or whatever. So this is like a really fantastic way to avoid that.
Yes, and yeah, and I kind of knew I got to figure out how I'm going to do this in Elm, because it's not a problem that I dealt with other things, but all the other stuff about JavaScript was a problem. So anyway, so the way that I've got the reason I mentioned the whole like HTML.app.message is because I don't do any of that, and the reason I don't do any of that is because this thing, and I'm open to suggestions on this, but basically I have a message that lets you navigate somewhere. I don't want to pass that like up levels of hierarchy. I don't really have levels of hierarchy so much as nested message types, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like if something can only produce a user message, like if this view could only produce a user message, then this view can't navigate. And I know that there are ways around this with using something more than just navigation, which is what I'm using now. But I like this. I like it being simple. But anyway, the whole point is my view can no longer be parameterized or tagged with user message here. So inside of the view, what have I changed? I'm really confused about why it won't let me go away. Anyway, inside of the view I have this kind of crazy bit. So basically, normally, if we were able to like HTML.app.map the user's new view to user message and new user form, then like we wouldn't have this bit on any of these, right?
Right.
And it's easy enough. I'm going to fix that next. I'm not worried about that. I know how to fix that. But anyway, I just wanted to explain to someone that was like, oh my god, this looks confusing, that this part has nothing to do with elm-simple-form and elm-mdl. Anyway, so, and actually I could even just go out of the way and get rid of it now. Might as well, to make this easier. New user message. Come on now. User form message. Okay. So that, and let's see, I can just do this and then it'll be fine. On input. Oh, except for I can't exactly do that because, yeah, I can. Totally can.
Yep.
Okay, so that should work. Let's see if it actually renders. Oh no, it doesn't, because that. And now it's upset because on blur. Yeah, that was actually what I. No, that's formed on
You
blur.
just need another.
Huh?
You need a few more parens or reverse
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, right. So on input. Oh, that's why this still works. Okay. Yeah, there we go. No. Surely, I mean, a reverse apply shouldn't work there. I'm going to undo because that's not the point. But that's ultimately what I'm going to do, but I'm not going to do it on the fly, and it'll go better. Okay, so anyway, the whole point is, though, all I had to do, if we look at what base input does, right, it just has like this value, which takes the value out of the state. It does this bit, which says what it should do on input, which is output this input message that knows what type of field it is, or that tags the field, and tags the field based on the value that came out of this function. And then these 2 bits, which just say focus this path or blur this path. And the path is like a string that represents the path to this part of the form in the dictionary that's holding it all.
Nice.
Anyway, so since I couldn't use the helpers, all I had to do is look how they worked, right? So okay, well that's it. There's like 4 attributes to add, so that's not hard. So here are those 4 attributes, and this is all it took. And then the other thing that I have is this bit. So I also add like conditional properties. So this is enough to make stuff work, but then it's not enough to show errors. And I could just show errors in exactly the style of the example and just like put a div somewhere, but the whole point of material design is it has all these things, right? One of the things that it has is that nice error message style. So conditional properties are like so. So I say, look, if there's a live error, go ahead and look at the error. If there's if there's not a live error, then like don't add the conditional properties. If there is one, then like let's look at the type of error. And the 2 that I saw were, I don't actually understand, because this happens in the case of an empty string, and so does this, but it depends on whether or not you've filled it out. So I think probably it's just yeah, I don't actually know what produces. So like if I haven't touched it, I get this empty error.
Oh, interesting.
So let me show you that. So if I haven't touched it, I get this. No, I don't.
So I guess.
Okay. If I back out of it, I get that. So that's different from invalid string. Okay, so invalid string is we haven't touched it. Empty is we touched it, but we made a string that's empty.
So I guess there's like a dirty bit in the forms, the field state or whatever.
Yeah, something like that. So the point is, like right now, I'm just and obviously I actually should do. Actually, hold on. Whatever. I'll just do text field dot error. Oh, right. I'll do this. Oh no, that's a case statement. Derp. This is kind of a stupid hack to make this maybe nicer, so that's okay. And then here, no, that's stupid too. Okay, whatever. Okay, I'm going to do a dumb thing here. I'm going to cons this on an empty list. And that's not what I want either. Okay, it doesn't matter. The whole point is I was going to, like, at some point, I don't need to be replicating text field.error 3 times, but again, not important.
Oh, I see.
The whole point is this should be a, I could do let error string equal, but then I want to introduce a maybe, and I'm not, my goal is not to refactor this right now. My goal is to show it to you. But I can't help it. I touch things, and I'm like, people are seeing this, and it's ugly, and I don't want them to think this is like how I would want to leave it. Anyway, so the whole point, though, is like, cool, that's all you have to do, and now you have like this translation function that totally should not just be probably right here in a let, but rather probably ripped out into a module that knows how to translate errors on a given form. But, easy to move. And it just works, and you can sort of say, okay, well, for this particular case, I have like form.array invalid string, but in the case of an email, right, maybe I could say like, lol, turns out email addresses have @ signs somewhere in them, or whatever you want the error message to be. And they give you all these nice validators in elm-simple-form, which I haven't dealt with sufficiently enough yet, but they have form.validate has type extractors, right? So string, int, float, bool, date, maybe, email, URL, and empty string. If we look at like, and then they have filters like min and max int, min and max float, min and max length, non-empty format included in. And then you can make custom validations as well. So, and these all work just exactly like JSON decoders, which is really, really enjoyable. And I would not have thought to make that API, but it turns out it's great. So email looks like this. So it says we've got a string, and like, so first off, validate that's a string at all. And then if it is a string, we have a string, we want to make sure it's a valid email pattern. And then, if it was invalid, we produce this invalid email thing, error message type. Same thing for URLs and stuff. So that's nice, and it's an obvious pattern for producing your own that's pretty straightforward. So I don't know, this is a very cool thing, and I was really happy to get it working inside of here. And so my next move is I do have, if I go to one of these things, I'm not using elm-simple-form on these yet, and but I am. Here's
Oh,
another.
nice.
Here's another thing. So I didn't know this because I had been like kind of being very hand wavy about errors because I hadn't figured out how I wanted to do sort of this error message representation yet, and so
Mm-hmm.
I was doing the whole like don't get blocked thing. So I was just ignoring it until I couldn't anymore.
Right.
And I couldn't anymore, so I was like, okay, cool. Well, I know my Phoenix API is like going to give me these nice error messages that tell me like, no, the errors, there's an error and the name field can't be blank, right? So I knew, cool, I get this from the API. It'll be very easy to merge in. But if you just use like from JSON in your API responses, which is the most straightforward way to start doing API response decoding,
Mm-hmm.
you don't have access to the response body in the event of a failure. So you can't just use from JSON and
Oh,
do
from
that.
regular HTTP.
Yeah. We could from from HTTP Extra, yeah. And so the obvious thing is to, or HTTP Builder, I guess it is now.
Yeah.
So the obvious thing would be to use that. But I was in the middle of like this series on validations, and I didn't want to be like, oh, by the way, like we need to change, like introduce a new library that's unrelated to validations. But at the same time, the fact that it kind of had, I had ignored that problem till now, made it an interesting thing. I was talking yesterday about how, like, I work like 60 or 70 or 80 hours a week, but like the work part is 40, and like the other stuff I do is play, and so I consider this play. So like I didn't know how all of this stuff would work. So rather than just being like, oh, I'll use a library, I made this kind of awful version of not good enough HTTP Extra that worked well enough for my needs. So like my API, instead of, let's see, I use our HTTP. So I produce like these RHTTP errors, which the whole point of all of this machinery was to be able to say my error message type that I'm going to use in the event of a bad response. This all looks exactly like HTTP. But in the bad response, I get a string, or HTTP value, sorry. No, it's a string. No, it's this. Anyway, so like I get the actual body of my, in the event of an error or a bad response.
Nice. Okay.
And that's all I needed, and you know all of this. But then in my API, I actually have it. So when I have an error, I have like this task.perform error message thing, and it can pass my error messages up, and then I can do stuff with them in my update. Anyway, so previously when I got a create user failed, it was an HTTP error, which meant that I couldn't do anything with the response body. So now I have this really awful update, really bad, because I haven't yet done any sort of refactoring. It does all this stuff to get the error message out and decode it. And right now all that it does is it produces just a value.
Cool.
Make sure it's JSON at all, and then I toString it, which is why when I do this, it looks awful, but at least you can read it.
Nice.
Except for that one, I don't even toString, so you can't even see that. So that's the I don't even decode that part. So this is actually the raw.
Right.
Anyway, that doesn't matter. But the only
okay, that's like the whole error.
Yes.
ADT instant. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. And obviously that's no good. But yeah, I needed some way to be able to represent. Like we have fields that we can show field validation errors on when we get back an error. But if the error is like, oh, the server said you suck and that's not valid, but it didn't give us validation errors, you get a 500 error or something, then I need some way to say like, this isn't a field error, this is some other thing. So I'm using the toasts.
Nice.
Anyway, so what I wanted to move on to was doing the async stuff, and I don't actually know how long you have, and this was a lot of setup time, but I've got time to do it. This is actually all I'm doing for the first couple hours of the day. So
yeah, I got plenty of time this morning.
Fantastic. So they have this thing, and I sent it to you in Slack, so I'll have to find it again because I don't want to put it on Slack, because then I'll get distracted probably. But they have this concept on, oh, there's input. It wouldn't be on input, it would be on field. Or is it an error? Maybe an error. It's an error. So they have like a custom error. That's not where it is either. I found it. Must be in form. Where was it? So we have like the a given field had like the live maybe it is back. Here we go. Field state. We have live error. We also have error. And this is a maybe of the field error. But I saw something that made me think that we can use that. So ultimately what we want to be able to do is say, like, there was a field error. It's not actually a live error, because the whole... Okay, so I haven't actually given the motivation. So imagine that this is an email field. For now, I'm just going to say that it is a name field. So if we go to like the API and we required uniqueness on the name, then, which is what you expect out of email fields a lot of times, then you can't do client-side validation on uniqueness, right?
Right.
That's server-side validation. That's where that knowledge lives. So, but you would want to be able to show it exactly like you show any other... Oh, this is not the right form. But you want to be able to show it exactly like you show any other error on the field, right? It's an error on the field. It's just not an error on the field we can know about until you've talked to the server. So I would expect just the same as cannot be blank. I would want this to say must be unique, or email already in use, or whatever. And I would want it to go through, like, I can definitely do a second order of things with my elm-mdl bits, right? I could definitely have this other thing that looks at some error message on the model, and that may end up be where I end up, and does just adds a text field error there. And actually, now that I think about it, it probably makes the most sense, because I don't... Yeah, there's just no need to do the thing I was going to do, because all I want to do is add an error state to this field, right?
Yeah, I mean, you're already escaping the stuff that's in the...
Yeah. So anyway, so I think it's not important. I think I would end up with... So the whole thing that I had planned is dumb and wrong and silly, but I still will do server-side validation. I just won't have to do any kind of integration, which is sort of the exact same process I went through with the other thing, integrating MDL in simple-form, which was like I came into it thinking I had all this stuff to do, and then it turns out functions are good, so I didn't really. I just had some mild function composition instead.
The real benefit, I think, of simple-form comes from the way it stores all that state for you.
And that's absolutely the case. But the validators are very very nice, and it makes sense for those two things to live together. You could do something like simple-form without validators, just fine. But it actually, I don't know that you could. Not really, because the whole point is you have to be able to ascertain that the shape of the form does in fact decode to your ultimate type.
Right.
And if you're doing that and it doesn't, you have to have some way to know. So I don't think you actually can reasonably do something like simple-form without validators. Now that I think about it, or you can. I think it's almost useless.
Yeah. Like you've been saying, you could think of the validator of simple-form as a JSON decoder as it applies to JSON.
Yeah, and it's a really cool thing. Like I understood how to use JSON decoders super well, because you have to. So JSON decoders are one of those things that my first 2 weeks with Elm was when I ran into them for the first time, and my first 2 days with JSON decoders was like, oh my god, what is this? Like I can kind of make things work, but why is this so awful and terrible? And then about my third day, I realized, now that I kind of am doing it, I don't think of it as awful and terrible. I think of it as like the way I want JSON decoding to work, and that is weird to me. I've had 3 or 4 things in Elm where, like, I was so bothered by the way a thing worked until I realized it was so much better.
I've heard that story of not finding decoders really weird, and then coming to find them as one of the more pleasurable parts of Elm. I've heard that story from a whole lot of people.
Yes,
it's a shared experience that we all have.
Yeah. So there's not all, because I definitely also have talked to a lot of people that I know are building really good stuff in Elm and are very knowledgeable, that still seem to dislike the way that decoders work. I don't... Yeah, I'm weirded out by that, just because it seems like... I understand disliking them until you get them. That makes total sense to me. I'm actually very confused by the people that I've seen that dislike them after I know they get them. Because, I should have a conversation at some point and see why that is. Because it's baffling to me. But it doesn't come up very often. And probably the people that are that way just aren't doing much with JSON. So like when they do have to reach for it, that's probably it. When they do have to reach for it, they kind of have to remember.
Oh, sure.
That's almost certainly it. Anyway, So, but yeah, this is the first time I saw kind of how you would implement something like JSON decoders as a type, because that's exactly how their type worked. And when I thought I needed to interact with it, I had to figure that out. Anyway, so I don't know. This is neat. If we wanted to do server-side decoding, we have our error messages. We have them. So, like, if we go to, in this case, create user failed, ignore the fact that this is awful and bad and wrong. Right now, I can say, look, bad response. And if it's text, it can be either a text or a blob, and like it actually can't be a blob yet, but you have to handle it. But if it's text, then we decode it, and so right now I'm decoding it just with jd.value. What I'd like to do is, I'm not sure actually what I want this to be, and actually this may be, I do think I want this to interact with simple form, and the reason for that is because if I can, all I would want to do is decode the error to the path in the form, and then I may still not need to interact with them, but I think I want to take advantage of the fact that my form fields have, like, this thing's form field path is, where do we even tell it that? I guess up here. Basically, I say, look, there's a name field on the new user form, and then the new user form itself has thin types.
So
No, it's going to be in.
So you might need something that kind of mirrors that structure. I hope that doesn't become really complicated.
Oh yeah, so I don't. Okay, so this is just some form, and you don't know what's in it at all. And then validate new user is how it knows that there's a name field, essentially. Ish, not really. It's kind of distinct, but here we're saying, like, get some field called name, and it probably doesn't exist yet the first time out of the form, and that will return. So this is fun. So get field as string, or get field in general, returns a field state, and so a field state is just one of these particular things, and they've defined it here. So it's just this record that has a path and a value and an error, and live error, and is it dirty, and is it changed, and does it have focus, and that's what you get regardless of whether that exists in the form, right? Because like, let's look at, like, value, get value path form. I haven't looked at this yet. So get value is the function you pass into it. So when you say get field as string, you pass it get string at, and so get string at would be this get value, and it gets a field at name form.
Okay, so right above there, get field at, it's doing some stepping through and looking at stuff.
Yeah, so it has this walk path function that looks at the maybe field, which is, what type is maybe field? Let's see, walk path gets called with, oh right, so you give it a qualified name, which is just name in our case, and it'll do the splitting on dot to figure out if it needs to walk down into a tree, just to give you that nice kind of dot-based API. I don't know. Yeah, I think it's nice. I think otherwise you have to, I don't know. I'm willing to say that may or may not be nice. And then we have some model fields, and we walk the path, and that means that we let's step forward. Walk. Okay, sorry. So they'll get the name of all the fields that exist, and it may what is so walk path name maybe field. Trying to figure out, so where's the just model out fields. What is model out fields? It's just a dict, right?
I don't know.
No, it's field. It's of type field. Really? What is type field? Yeah, that's going to be a thing that shows up a million times on this. It's exposing field. I just missed it. Oh, form.field as field exposing everything.
Okay.
And so that's also going to expose field. That makes sense that it would live there, though. Okay, so a field is what that has the type of, and can be either a group of name fields or a final field. Well, so I don't actually understand one thing then. Well, I already had that open. That sucks. So
it's a tree.
Okay. But how is it a tree? Just on the group?
Yeah, so you got these leaf nodes from 19 to 24, and then branches at 18.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. Which makes sense because you're walking it. Okay. So the model has like this fields thing and get field at, walk the tree, and get field at is here. And so I'm still trying to figure out like what maybe field. So we have just modeled out fields. Oh, it's a just. Okay, so the first one is there because it's just. Okay, so you have the field, which is one of those tree types, and you have maybe dot and then field at name. So if it was, oh, so here's a question for you then. So okay, if we had like just text string, what is field at? Oh, if it's not a group, it doesn't have a thing at that field. If it is a group, then it returns whatever was there. And cool. So how do you, I guess actually you're not meant to start off with something that's other than a group.
Right.
Okay. So I'm still moderately confused. You eventually end up with dict string field. So maybe field, and you walk the path. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Okay. You end up with maybe a field, and stuff is generally good. So when you get the field at name form, you might have gotten a field with that name, and then if you did, it's a string.
Cool.
And then, just out of curiosity, what is AskString?
I think it's gonna try and unwrap that field type and see, is this something that contains a string? Like, if it's an integer field, then you're just going to get nothing back. But if it's something that has a string in it, you'll get the content. Yeah.
Yep. Okay, cool. So it unwraps these bits. Okay, cool. So that's kind of nice. At least know how it works. So the thing is, do you want to talk through this bit with me? Let's leave these two things open. So we've got this create user failed. We had some error, and we wanted to code it. I think that, so we decode this, and it ends up being let's look at the error again. You know, getting this error here. It's like there's errors, which is an object, sort of a dict of strings and list of strings. So if we wanted to like just kind of like ramble, we could say, let me do this in, I'll do it here, whatever, because this is not, sorry, let me just do a new one. Put it here. Okay, so let's say like type, and we will call it, it'll be an alias, and for now I'll just say like user, I don't want user anything, I want to say like API field errors or something.
Cool.
And that is a dict of string fields and lists of strings.
Is it always going to be that level of nesting, like just the one?
I don't know about always, and I don't want to think about always.
Cool.
When it is something else, it is time to rework it.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I spent too much of my development time. So this is like the whole like just be dumb and simple and do the dumb thing that works. Like that's how I started development, but like doing that part was hard. And then like I got good at doing that part, and I went to let's play Jenga in our head and try to outthink what's going to happen 6 steps down the line. And that was really fun, and like I knew a lot of other developers that did it, and sadly I taught some developers to do that. And like it worked out okay, and like I built stuff that was good and worked, and so I thought consequently my strategy was good. And then I built some stuff that I had thought well in advance of some problems for a real good friend of mine who made a startup, and we'd made a successful company for him before he sold for a lot of money. And so he came back to us and he said, look, we had these problems with like scaling last time. That was really because of like the scale that at which his company grew, and the fact that he made some. He only made a few bad decisions, but they sort of bundled up from a technical point of view. And I still can't even say they were bad decisions because he sold his company for a lot of money. So like, and part of that was staying ahead of his competitors for. I think if he had to stay ahead of his competitors for another year, he would have gotten in trouble. But he sold it before that, so like the people that bought it can deal with cleaning up the mess we made.
Nice.
But like his next company, he didn't want to deal with all the pain that we'd gone through, and he said, so like let's definitely, got a lot of money, it was very great. So like let's definitely spend the time up front to do all this stuff to make sure we don't have those problems. And so we did, and we set up like this microservices architecture and all this like all of this deployment stuff way early because you have to when you do microservices stuff. And it was really good and perfect. I mean, continuous deployment of all this stuff. It was great. And development was a little bit more frustrating than it needed to be because microservices at the time, but like it was great and we were like safe from all these problems. And then 4 months later, he pivoted his company entirely, and 10 of the 12 services we had built were pointless.
Gotcha.
And we never would have hit any of the scaling problems with that design, but at least we spent an extra 50 grand or so setting up this overthought, over-architected thing.
Right.
So that was frustrating, and that's honestly the thing that made me stop doing that. So now I just do the really dumb thing, and then I fix it when it breaks.
Right on.
The key is fix it when it breaks, because if you don't do that, you end up with technical debt weighing you down. Okay, anyway, sorry, I like to ramble philosophically about software development when I have a thing that saved me lots and lots of time, but took a long time and lots of pain to figure out. Yeah, so let's decode this into an API field errors, right? So if there was an error, we had a bad response from the API, we don't want to return a string. This is going to return API errors. API field errors.
Yeah.
Now we don't decode it into a string or any of that crap. What am I doing? Okay. So we don't decode string. We do. We're decoding a string, so we're decoding this. But we want to decode with our decoder is going to be decode API field errors.
Cool.
And actually, it's not going to be that. It's going to be. I have a decoders module, so it'll be API field errors decoder. And then if I want OK val and error, I want like result and then, right? Result.map. Not. Again, I don't want to have this case statement because.
Sure. What are we mapping to?
Well, so in the event that we didn't successfully decode the errors, but we know that they existed, I'm not sure. We can map to an empty dict for now, and console.log or something. So we would do like
result with default.
Huh?
Like result with default.
Yeah, thank you, with default. Decode string, and we're decoding API field errors decoder, and it's the response body. And then I will pipe result.withDefault. I want to pipe that to result.withDefault because it takes that the default as the second argument, doesn't it? Oh, no, it takes it as the first argument, doesn't it?
Yep.
Okay, which is fine. Okay, so result.withDefault, and I'll just say like dict.empty. And I'm actually going to say debug.log derp didn't get an API field errors decodable response back. Instead got response body on dict.empty. And that'll return dict.empty, which is what I want there. And this part, my debug.log, needs to be so I can actually add those strings. And then this is awful, so let's break it down on another line at least.
kind of wish there was a way to get debug.crash to evaluate lazily so that you could pass it to result.with default and maybe .with
Reserved
default.
word in. Indentation doesn't match. Oh, really? Oh, sorry, I don't need that. It was just wrong and dumb. That's why. I've got I need badly for Elm format and the Vim integration to not work the way that it presently does, but I haven't yet needed it badly enough to fix it. But yeah, it needs to use like the quick fix buffer or whatever. Anyway. Okay, so, or, put it in a different buffer rather than do the crazy thing. Okay, so this should give us an API error, and in the event that it didn't, we will return this. And we will say this is a blob. How did that happen? I will assume toString will exist for the blob when it occurs. Okay. And then again, good lord, yeah, so this obviously has to get refactored, but again, don't give a crap. Hold on, why do I don't... Okay, whatever, that's a really dumb way that I did that, but whatever. I'm just going to do this. It's ugly, still, but it's a different kind of ugly.
Nice.
And then reflow, yeah. Oh no, can't do it there without wrapping it in parens, which is why I had the parens in the first place. All right, that one's going to stay that way. All right, everything is terrible and awful and ugly, but whatever. Okay, so we have some API errors, API field errors. That's what our decoded error is. And so here I have like this and log thing, and for now I'm just going to say like toString so that we can still have that bit. Okay, so that if I spell it right, that should work. I think that'll work. The compiler disagrees strongly. The compiler says that let me move this thing over. It doesn't know what dict is. That's fine.
Classic.
So I almost certainly need to put it into there as well as here. Hold on, I haven't written this decoder yet, so it still won't work. I love that. I love that I just don't remember. Yeah, so it should be telling me that, hey, I don't know what the decoder is. No. Source types. Didn't I fix it there? No. Yes, I did. Oh, I'm trying to build.
Import dict exposing dict, maybe?
Thank you. Arg. Okay, and I don't know that 30 is the actual number. Okay, so it doesn't know what API field errors is, which is fine. Now it does. Okay, explain to me why when I turned off notifications that shows up. I've been told by people for years about how dumb I was for being a Linux user because Macs just work, and every day I find a new irritation. Okay, it doesn't know about API field errors over here. I haven't actually explained it there. I'm going to go ahead and import that type because I know I'm going to need it. And then here, no types. And then here probably, did I use it here? No. Can't find response body. What? Oh, down here I didn't have a response body. So, toString that. Okay, it doesn't know about response body in 173. Okay, so again, the toString the error. And now I just need to define the decoder. Also, something that I like, there are things where I would think, God, just be done. Like back in the day, I'd be like, I really like Elm, but man, I'd just be done already. But what I meant almost always, I realized, was like I would have a working but really broken and crappy implementation already, and then I would never fix it because I didn't have to deal with the types.
Yep.
So like that's I think a thing that I have one of the sort of hurdles to convincing people to use Elm that I know would be happier for it is like they look at it and they're like, well, you've taken quite a while to build this form thing, which granted I'm actually turning into like blog posts and content every freaking commit I do just about, but they're like, I'd just be done with that by now, but like they wouldn't really. They'd just be done enough that they could throw it on the world and make everybody else's life that interacts with it suck because they don't know about their errors. Anyway, so that's a thing. Not a hugely important thing. Okay, so this is decoding a dict. So it turns out we have a decoder for that. And I need to grab the field. So let's look at this again. I can't actually look at it. The field was like, so let me actually just do jd.succeed dict.empty. Is that right?
Yeah, that'll work.
So now I have a working decoder. API field errors decoder. I didn't import that in here. I did get decoders. No? Oh, I have decoders in here. This makes sense. I don't normally do decoding in here. And I'll actually just... Okay. My life got better when I stopped exposing dot.
Yeah, I'm trying to do that less as well.
The function with default is expecting the second argument to be a result, but instead I flipped the... I didn't even give that a order. Hold on a second. I've got some missing parens almost certainly. Yeah, so my second argument is not what it should be. I've got this.
Oh, yeah, another set of parens.
Everything is bad. Like, let's just, sorry, I really want to put those around the result.with default. And obviously I don't want to do any of the things I'm doing here, but get it working. Where's that, 163? That's right here.
So it's not treating, it's treating debug.log with that first string as the thing you're passing into result.with default.
Okay, so I did actually need to put the parens where I put them initially.
Yeah.
Ignore that. So that's some weird... I actually should have kept it up long enough to chat about it. That's a weird compiler error I get every now and then. It's like, hey, this elmi file isn't where it should be. See, you saw me say, don't bother me, oh my god, don't bother me. And then the Mac's like, well, yeah, but what if I bothered you? Like, a lot and constantly. And I don't remember where... Oh, God, I hate... Okay, so how do I make it shut up? How do I make it shut up? I use... I have to scroll up. Yeah. I don't use this enough. I just use it enough to be mad. Okay, so it compiles, so now we can actually look at that error message. Let me kill this. I don't want to have this open tab between it. So now, this is on projects new. I did that on users new, which was the dumbest place I could have done it because I can't actually get an error from them presently without changing my API, and that's fine. So let's change my API real quick. It's just not Elm. Okay, so web, controllers, users. Actually, no, I don't need to do that at all. I need to go to the model. I'm just going to say you can't have a user with the same... I think that I can just do validate unique. I don't remember at all. Let me open the test. Or let's say Um, something like this. Maybe this way I'll also get to see what my error message looks like before I... Oh no, I don't have... Oh, there. Okay, it's not validate unique. I do... yeah. I do too many languages. All I do is look up documentation all day long.
Ah, unique constraint.
Unique constraint. Oh yeah, and I actually have to add that at the database level, which is fine. I like that a lot about Ecto. I just forget it. And why am I doing this at the controller? I don't know. Where was I? Oh, web. Models. User. It wasn't a list, was it? You ever played with Elixir?
I started to, and then life got in the way.
I don't in any way think everybody ought to use Elixir. I think it's great. It solves very real problems I had, but
I think I'm going to have to buy some books to get started with it.
or you're going to be at Strange Loop.
Yep.
Obviously, this is not a migration I want to exist in the world, but whatever. And I don't remember how to do ecto uniqueness constraint migrations. Whatever this will be. Almost certainly. I almost get like, let's see, unique. Just unique true. So I want to alter, I want to modify the column and let's make it unique true. Okay. It's alter table. Yeah, alter table users. I'll modify name, still a string. Now it's unique.
Cool.
I don't need to run that because these are just in my tests. Okay, got a 201. It was able to make it anyway. Whatever, I'm going to come out of the controller test because this is a stupid place to write that test anyway. Oh, I don't have a user test. That's why I thought to do it. Yeah, that's not appropriate. This probably isn't what you thought we'd be doing right now.
I'm learning. I'm seeing what it's like to refactor.
Okay, so this is a user. That's all fine. This is a super basic, like, generated thing. Okay, so this test should run. No, hold on, let me run the whole test. Okay, and I want to say can't create existing users. Should be able to say user with actually I can do like user.changeSet user. This is the best way to do it with the valid attributes and repo.insert bang, and let me alias repo. I like this a lot. This is new in Elixir 1.2 maybe, but no 1.1. But you know, rather than having, you might recognize this from Elm code.
Right.
But the problem is in Elm code I almost never have just like an import, right? I have a lot of other stuff. So
Yeah.
it's not actually reasonable to want. It just, occasionally I think I want it. Okay, and then I should say it's not a valid change set.
Well, I like that. Refute.
Expected false or null got true, so it is a valid change set. I don't know, io.inspect, whatever that is. He's there? He's got the same name? Derp. I'll have to have unique index. No, hold on. Yeah, see, validate unique used to exist. Unique constraint. So now you actually, I get this out of the chain set. So sure, it should. It has a unique constraint. Let me actually just try to insert it. I'm just going to put both of them because I don't actually care about this. I just want to get to the point where I don't actually care about any of this at all. I just want to try to do those but 2 bits of code. And it worked, and it made a second user with the same name. So the unique constraint is not working. So probably this is because my migration did something dumb. So let's say create unique index. And it'll actually rerun that migration in my test. So. Oh, I said email? Really? Okay, whatever. Okay, so that worked, and so now I should be able to come back to what I had before and see. It should tell me it was invalid. Except for it's not invalid. So it doesn't happen at the chain set. It happens when you try to insert, which makes sense because the chain set doesn't do a query anymore, they mentioned. So okay, so what happens in the controller, I wonder? I don't actually know. Okay, we would get name has already been taken. That's what I want to test. I'll ignore everything else right now. I'm not going to fix tests here because this isn't even a thing I want to have. I just wanted to get that error. Okay, so back to Elm. And first things first, I was going to really get frustrated in a second because I wasn't going to run the migrations on the actual running server. And then I was going to wonder why the thing that obviously worked in my test didn't work. And I was going to yell. Okay, so now, let's see here. Now I should just be able to see what that error is. It should still just be, it should log an empty dictionary, I think, right now, because that's what we're decoding. So let's see, ASDF, sure, that's my name. Let's make a new user. That's what it looks like. It's valid. So, okay, we finally got to the freaking use case. Awesome. So we got a dict from list. So we had an error, we just don't know how to show it. Okay, so what we want to do is come to the, is that in the update?
Do we need to finish writing our decoder?
Yes, maybe that's the most obvious thing. Okay, so we, all right, it'd be nice. Let me just do this. Okay. Okay, so somewhere I should have gotten an R. Errors name has already been taken. Okay, so what we want to do is say errors. It's a JD dot. It's an object, but we want to turn it into a dict. Okay, so it's a dict.
Right.
Yeah. And specifically, it's a dict of string. That's not how that works, though.
So I think Json.Decode.Dict is going to assume your keys are strings. Because there's a, yeah.
Yep. Okay, so we just tell it what the values are. And our values are lists of strings.
So it's going to be jd.list, jd.string.
Thank you.
Cool. Oh, it just doesn't like the parens and stuff, yeah.
Name has already been taken. Sweet.
Awesome.
So now we just want to say, okay, so we have these API field errors. And right now we are giving them to you, sort of decode error. Right now we're logging them. Okay, so we got some errors when create user fails. What we want to do is get those errors into the view. So the view is here, no, here. And ultimately we want to be able to like put them here. But specifically, I guess it's fine. Yeah, actually it's fine. So like, yeah, it's all fine. So we're getting an error back that's going to be like name, and the fact that it matches this is kind of incidental because this could be some nested thing. So I don't need to depend on that.
Mm-hmm.
So really I just want to say like, okay, well I'm already having to get this field as a string from the model new user form thing.
Mm-hmm.
I want to do something similar to get my API field errors out of the model. Right? Is there a better way to do it? Like ultimately we have to use the model to get this data, so we need to put it on the model. Where would you propose putting it on the model? Oh, actually, hold on. No, that's right. Okay, so and here's the problem. Right, so these are kind of like live errors in the existing style, and if we just put an error on the thing, yeah, this is why I was sort of feeling funky about it. Oh, I totally know what we can do. That was actually awesome. Okay, so what you want to do is like if I have an invalid name, and then I do like this shouldn't be in an error state anymore, right? We don't know.
Right.
We don't have presently, and I think maybe never. I don't think that I've seen any commonly in use pattern that is good for differentiating between client-side errors and server-side errors on a field.
Yeah.
I've seen a couple of attempts that seemed interesting, but I think I only saw screenshots. I don't know that I ever saw an implementation. So my point is, if we just also add this text field.error about that, then especially squirrely if we also have live errors, because we'd have to be like appending to the string. So if you fixed one of the live errors, but not the API error, we'd still know about it. Because anyway, it's I don't like it. So what I think we could do is if we can produce one of these errors, right? And we know we can do custom errors. Then that's where I thought, oh yeah, custom errors, but I had not done all the wiring yet in my head. So basically, we already have this field here. If we can put a new error onto it in the live error, in the event of submission, because you can't even submit if it had an error. So you won't have the case where you got something back from the API with an error, and you need to show both a field error and the API error.
Right.
So it's fine to kill this live error, just replace it, because we will. If we have an API error, we know this didn't happen. I say that, hold on, but it's in our model. So like that had to be dirty checking on it. Should I? Do you have any idea how we can sort of write down? I think that you kind of have the same mental model of the thing I'm trying to solve. Do you have any ideas? Do you think we should start writing some things down to figure it out?
So it seems like we want, I guess, like a maybe API field errors on our model somewhere, and this is going to get interesting because we might have multiple fields with asynchronous errors, and if we edit name, we don't want it to clear out the other stuff.
But we can ignore that part. Like, right? We don't have two fields, so
that's true.
Let's not overthink it. First, let's just do the dumb thing. Okay, so let's just add maybe API field errors, and we'll maybe make a Oh, this is awesome. So I have an idea. So our model. Right now we have a new user form. which is a form user, right?
Mhm.
But what if instead it is a maybe API errors fields form user?
Nice.
Actually, maybe the other way around makes a lot more sense. It doesn't know about...
API field errors.
Thank you. God, names are the worst. I hate having to remember them. Okay, so now if our new user form is that, then it's fine. So now we actually know how to update it. So when we come over here and we say like, oh, it sure would be nice if we could put those in here, we can put those in there because we just say model, say the new user form, which we know we're dealing with, becomes model.newUserForm that, and what are these things called? What did I actually store? Error? No. What am I doing with it? Decode error. Okay, decode error. Yeah, decode error returns it back. Sorry. And decode error. And we'll still log it. And I'll put a...
One more parens after.
Yeah, Elm format agrees. There.
Cool.
All right, so let's not though. Let's
Oh, just. We need to adjust out front here.
a what?
We need to adjust right there.
Thank you. In that case, when you create the user successfully, we know we want the new user form to be... Let's just look at all the places we do stuff with the new user form. Now this becomes that thing. And this is new user form message. We got some message. Yeah, so that's fine. It's second model.newUserForm. There's some tuple.extra that makes it easy to say, like, let's just update this, like, let's map through this first part of the tuple.
Right.
I've never used it. I think that it is about time for me to start using it because it will encourage me to... I think this is good. Like, I think a tuple is exactly the right thing here, and I would have done a lot of other things conceivably, and I would hate to reach for a tuple and then go, yeah, but I don't want to do a bunch of first and second, and then make a bad decision. Okay, and so...
I wonder how Evan would feel about a thing in your elm-package.json that could tell the compiler what things you want ambiently imported.
Oh, so that like all your projects kind of got them at first?
Yeah, like the tuple extra stuff like map first and map second and stuff I would totally use, but I'm hesitant to import a whole thing and add a line to the top of my file just to have it around. I just kind of want it to be there, but...
So like, do you want it to go into all of your packages anytime you make one?
Like I want to start a project and have my elm-package.json for the project, and I want to say like, in addition to all the default stuff, also make tuple extra just be around all the time.
So yeah, it's interesting. I wonder, you could maybe take it further. I don't know. You could maybe have some of those that you're like, I use these a lot, but I don't want them in everything. Because like I might like a list of 6 or 7. Like I might just want to have elm-mdl when I want to reach for it. But what if the compiler could be like, he referenced this module and he said this module is found here, so let's just add that.
Yeah.
So like when I used tuple.extra for the first time, it was like, all right, let's go get it. Anyway, don't know that that's actually a good thing. Definitely not a good use of someone's time right now, but I think it's kind of fun to think about.
Totally.
Okay, so this new user form, our initial model does not have the right shape for new user form. So initial model should be, we have this and nothing. And then I have all kinds of other places that I use the new user form. They all have to treat it like a tuple. Cool, I don't do anything with it here. And then here I say, oh no. Where are my parens? Where's that paren? That is wrong. Yeah, this is... Turns out formatting your code is useful. Let me do this, because that was not clear to me at all, and I just happened to notice it. Now, granted, the compiler would have told me, but...
Oh, nice. Okay.
Okay, so where else do I have a user form? We know we don't need this anymore. So this is the thing that we get to get rid of. A lot of these. Just a whole lot of these things. Yeah, so this and initial model and user form. That's fine because it does use the initial model's version of it.
That should be comma nothing.
No, the initial model's new user form is a proper new user form. Right here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because the new user form is not the form anymore, it's the two-tuple. But this comes off the initial model, so we know it's fine. Okay, so everything in here is fine. Let's compile and have it yell at us. Maybe API field errors. Well, okay, model.elm, that's types. We have API field errors. I'd also love to talk about the sortable field stuff at some point, because this is not tenable, but it's not, I can't even, until I start actually implementing different fields for these different REST resources, it's not going to become clear what the solution is. So today is not the time to talk about that. Cool, that works. And so now we have a model with, oh, this shouldn't work. Why does that work? Why did this compile?
I don't know, it shouldn't have.
I'm curious what happened. It probably didn't really. Yeah, so this is a problem. Like, I can't wait for 0.18 if for no other reason than, like, my problem is I don't actually give a crap when something didn't compile that should have and I have to remove it. I really freak out when I get like a success, but it wasn't really a success. It just didn't know a thing had changed. Yeah, so this also, the compiler process is like, hey, I can't find this build artifact. But then, like, I don't have to do anything. I just run it again. And that's not a problem anymore.
Nice.
Okay, so name field is saying that we get this model, but we inferred that it didn't look the same. Neat. Error messages. Hurrah. First model.user form. And that should compile and everything should work. I think that's the only place I use it otherwise. Yeah. Okay, that works. So now I want to say, like, errors, or API errors, is, we'll call it second model.newUserForm. And we will say, I'll do a case name.liveError of, I can't update, yeah, I totally can. Okay, so I'm going to say new error, whatever. Actually, I don't give a crap. I'm just going to override it if there are any API errors. So case API errors of, in that case, why do I even give a crap about doing this? Case of, oh, because it's so much easier to read. Nothing, then like cool. So I'll say like name.liveError. Oh, I can't do that. Okay, so
we might have to match on both at the same time.
Well, so what I'm going to have to do is, well, I mean, I ultimately have to replace name. Okay, so I guess like I can, so I'll say name equals, actually this is fine. Case API errors of, and then once I have multiple fields, it'll become very clear that I need something to make this better. But again, I was trying to do the thing where I do other stuff. Just, I don't want case API errors. I want to say case dict.get API errors.
So right now API errors is a maybe. So perhaps we just want to.
Oh yeah, sorry. Nothing. Then we don't do anything. If it's just error dict, well, sure. And I'll say case error dict.get. No. Name of nothing. Just a list of errors, so just error list. Then what I want to do is say name with live errors. And what is live? What are the errors? They are something like this. So it's form.error. There's not an error where I can just put a string on it, is there? Sure, it'd be nice. What are error types? Everything about like dealing with types in this fashion makes me so happy, and I just didn't care about them at all when I was like, lol, maybe some nils are here and who cares. But now I'm like really happy. So there's nothing that's like, here, put a string in it and you're good.
Custom error, maybe?
Custom error. That's a good point. Custom error string, and then, but you have to deal with the custom error, don't you? No, it's type error string. Okay. So, no, type error E. Oh, right now, we can't, because that's actually what that, well, I haven't actually looked at my model in a while. Yeah, so right now, our custom error would have to be of the unit type, right? I think that's what that field is. So let's look and make sure. That's ultimately where that parameter ends up.
Yep.
Form. Yep. Custom error. And so, I can just do string. I don't want to do that. Yeah, I do. Yeah, form string. I can make it better later, but for now, that's cool. So now live error would just be custom error. And then how do I join a string? How do I join a list into a string? That's a thing, right?
String.join.
I've literally never done that in Elm. String.join error list and give it a comma or something.
That's going to be the first parameter to the function. Yeah. You're probably going to have to import string too.
So it looks like it has form thing user maybe B. So where did I use?
Initial model.
Thank you.
No, that makes sense.
No, you're right, because it's maybe. Hold on, let me look. Form.initial, yeah. No, hold on. Let me look at form.initial. We're already there. List of string field, where those are the initial fields. Okay, so you can give it initial fields. Why do I even want to? I don't actually know. And then you get, the validation. So I have some validation. Okay.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Yay, because decoders. Yeah, and all that says is the validation, and this is the parameter for custom error, which is the only thing in the ADT that has a type parameter. It's still not building. Multiple values named name in this less expression. Well, of course there are, because I am treating things stupidly. Okay, so I want to say like raw name, and then everything should work. I also need to, I definitely need to add a vim key binding that says go to the line below my last import statement.
Oh, nice.
I do so much of that, and I'm like, and it's never, I don't know, or I should just get better with the navigation. So custom error it doesn't know about, because it's not custom error, it's form.error.custom error. And then dict.dict, oh, I do that. I just flipped the order. That's kind of the Elixir showing through, is
Gotcha.
that like the in Elixir, the first argument is what you pipe into. So the first argument is always the data structure that you're interacting with.
Oh.
And that's only because there's no partial function application in Elixir. That's the only reason to actually do that. And in Erlang, the order of the data structure is like whatever the person writing that code at that particular moment thought was a good idea. Which is one of the benefits of Elixir, is like you can reason about things without just testing or go and reading the docs quite as much. Okay, cool. So we said live error should be a maybe form. Okay, that's fine. Makes sense. The more I write Elm, the more I use the little application arrows, and that's good and nice. So that can't be blank, but if I pay... it was still on my clipboard. Boom!
Nice.
Boom! So if it's a custom error...
Cool. That's great. Look at that.
Boom! And the live validation stuff just worked. The hot module replacement worked.
Nice.
You do hot module replacement with your elming?
I haven't tried it yet. I'd try to stay away from Webpack if I can.
I felt that way for a really long time. I still think that it would be like, I think it's the if I can part that I move the needle on occasionally, like what is acceptable, because like this right here, it's not that big of a deal, but it's nice that I didn't have to paste that in again, and that it just remembered that there's an API error still, but it replaced the freaking module underneath.
I don't mean to say that Webpack's not a really impressive and awesome tool. It just
I know what you're trying to say. It's like, it is a
in my head. I can't be going to those docs every 30 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, I already have to, like, I write Phoenix and Elixir stuff constantly, and I have to look up how to do a unique migration, because I almost get kind of self-conscious about this, because I'll have people like just say like, yeah, shouldn't you have known this thing? I'm like, no, I know other things. This thing I let someone else know. Okay, anyway, so now when I type, it should go away, and it doesn't. Right, so now we're to the next problem, which is that the live error does not get cleared if... Okay, so let's think here. It wouldn't be dirty anymore, right? I think that the name field probably isn't dirty anymore. Let me do this, and after I submit, I think it's going to be dirty before I submit, and clean after I submit. So raw name is dirty. Submit is dirty false. So if I have the field that I'm going to be replacing it on, but it's not dirty, then we're good. As soon as it gets dirty, this part doesn't need to happen. So that's fine. That's what this is for. So we say case raw name dot is dirty of it's dirty, then cool, it owns this. If it's not dirty, then we own it. Okay. So now, boom.
Nice.
I think that's done.
Oh, what happened there?
Where? Oh, just a million things. So things in I'm console.logging every message, but like that means that like when I do this, you see other stuff happen like afterwards because there are messages being
the field is empty.
Oh right. Oh yeah. Oh, never mind. It says why does it say has already been taken? That's a very good question. So I can do this, and it cannot be blank. I submit. Probably because it's already been. But no, it shouldn't. Oh, so I submitted, and it didn't submit because of this. But once I submitted, it was no longer marked dirty because the form had handled a submission, I think. So
those errors are still hanging around. Like our inner model, we still have a just.
Right. So and we want it. So we want it to still be there, right? Because if I have a live validation error here, or do we? Yeah, definitely. We want it to be there in general because, like if I had a live validation error, so I couldn't submit the form, but I hadn't fixed another field that still had a backend problem, I think we still want to like leave that problem lingering. There's no reason to submit it again if they haven't changed it, which it shouldn't change because there's a live error. So I'd actually know if it will. It should. Shouldn't change because there's a live error. And the thing is, the live error I think goes away when you submit. No, it can't. So actually, I'm confused. Okay, so we do this. We're good. We submit. I forgot that was still showing up. So we submit, and we don't have a live error on the raw name field, but we add it because we had an API error. We still have an API error, but we don't have a live error. So let's make a live error on the field. And it's that. I try to submit, then why would the live error go away if I try to submit? Well, let's just look. I'm already still showing the raw name stuff. So let's see. Right now it has a live error. It's just, oh, live error is just empty already.
Empty as in the string is empty?
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, okay. So then I submit. It still has a live error. Oh, it's no longer dirty. Duh. Not really duh. Okay, so hold on. It's not dirty. It is changed. What does is changed mean? Okay, so dirty means since the last time you clicked the button, I guess, and is changed means since the form was. What could it mean in this case? I don't know. We'll just switch to is changed and see what happens. At this point, I'm not going to think through it, but then I want to know some more in my head. Okay, so is changed. Can I be blank? Cool. So now I do this, and now it hasn't changed. So, hold on. It has changed. Did I do that in backwards? Okay, I can't do that. So I have to know about, I don't want any of this. I want to say, okay, I know what I want. If it's dirty and the live error is not equal to nothing.
Cool.
And then what did I do wrong? A bunch of stuff. Is this the wrong direction for that?
I just want more friends after nothing.
Except for no. Like there's, how about not that many parens that aren't needed? Okay, cool. So let's try it again. We have that. Submit. It's been taken. It didn't go away. Okay, so why didn't it go away? It's not dirty. There's a live error. Oh, live error is, I said, yeah, so live error is not equal to nothing, so it should be raw name, which means it should be showing me the live error. But I didn't do this. I didn't do this at all. Oh, hold on. No, it doesn't update it with the name except for, hold on. So, what happens when I do, what does my input look like? So like when I say on input, I do a form field text, form input name path. So, yeah, I don't hand it this particular raw name field. Yeah, I do. Name.path, though. I don't give it the whole field. So, okay. So, there's no way that my changes are like floating around in a message somewhere. Which is what I thought might have happened. But, okay. So, if it's dirty, oh, it's no longer dirty. Yeah, it is. It's dirty. Let's see. Is dirty is false. Let me, hold on. Okay, so do that. And when I do this, is dirty is still false because I submitted. Now is dirty is true. Is dirty is true. So yes, it's true. Oh, hold on. This is not the wisest. So let's see. I want to do this. I could start nesting things, and I think that's the worst. I'm going to say case raw name dot is dirty, and then hold on, what was that before? Okay. Rather than an and, right? This is the same thing, except for now we don't lose the everything. We don't need this. Okay. So now we handle the 4 cases. Fine. Now we know, like, we have a list. Okay. So if it's dirty and it has a live error, then just show it. Should be fine. Okay.
Yep.
If it's not dirty, let's say if it's dirty and it doesn't have a live error, then we want this bit. And I'm going to fall through to 2 things there, so I'm just going to leave that one at the bottom. If it's not dirty and it has a live error, we do something. It's not dirty It doesn't have a live error. Okay. Okay, so if it's not dirty, but it does have a live error, then show the live error, right?
Yep.
We don't own it. Or do we? If it's not dirty, yeah, actually, yeah, that should be fine.
Yep.
And if it's not dirty, really, I'll say like anything in false, which should have been the same as what I just did, so I'm not really sure what could be different here. Seems to have worked. Oh, and only now it says has already been taken. Okay, so we've lost our ownership. So we're dirty, and we have a live error, right? Why are we not dirty right now? I'm deleting things.
We don't have a live error though.
Hold on though, but let's see here. We're dirty. We're no longer dirty. I deleted some stuff.
We don't have a pre-existing live error right now.
Okay, so cool. We're dirty, but we don't have a live error. Okay, so we need to handle true false differently. Neat. If we're dirty, all right. So the whole point is, if we're dirty, like then on this particular field, if this particular field is dirty, then any API errors on this field we don't care about because we've changed the thing. Okay, cool.
Nice.
Boom.
Awesome.
Not awesome.
No.
Hold on. Yeah. Actually, that's better because we were showing that even before you blurred away. Wonder why that was. Anyway, don't know, don't care. Has already been taken. We changed it all. We're good. We're good. Yeah, I don't actually know why that's different than. Oh, it's because I've already blurred the field once. Never mind. Oh, is this dirty like I've blurred?
I genuinely don't know what that means.
Let's see. Okay, so I click into it.
By it.
It's not dirty yet. When I blur, I haven't changed it. Okay, no, it's not dirty. It's not changed.
So maybe, I guess like the first time you do anything in the field, even if you go back to...
Oh, so it's not dirty anymore.
No.
It's changed. I feel like this is something that I should know. So here's the thing that I find fascinating. I have definitely written a lot of code around this exact concept, whatever this is. And it is bizarre that I don't just know off the top of my head here. So it's possible we still have some kind of error, but for now I think we're good. I'm going to commit what we have. Yeah, I'm going to make a different branch for this. Okay, so API validation. API, no, server-side errors in elm-simple-form, elm-mdl fields. And I want to check out, I'll call this O2.4 Josh Luke pairing. Cool. So what do you want to do next? We have some pretty ugly code. Do we want to make it less ugly?
So I actually think I have to get going.
Okay, that's fair. I have a guy that I told I'd talk to 30 minutes ago and didn't, so that's good.
Sounds good.
All right, awesome. I'll talk to you later. Thanks for doing this. At least we finally got there right before you had to go.
Right on. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'll see you.
See you later.